There are two big things that give us a lot of confidence when we go off to hunt. One is doing the work and knowing that you've done the work. And two is having a good idea of where you stand right now, whether that's from, your hunting skills position or your shooting, and definitely with your fitness. Knowing that you're ready based on certain benchmarks does a whole lot for your decision making when you're out hunting. I talked on a podcast with Phil Vallejo the other day. I was a guest on the Cadre podcast, and he was talking about how at some points, when he's not training as consistently as he should be, he doesn't scout as well as he should in the summer, and he certainly doesn't hunt as hard as he could during hunting season. You see critters over there, and you're like, well, that's too far. And one of my biggest goals with Pack Mule is giving people the confidence that they know they can go wherever they need to go to be successful, but also just enjoying the shit out of themselves while they hunt or do whatever else there is that they want to do, because they're confident in their fitness. And you can put the work in that's going to help you be confident in your fitness, but it also helps to have some benchmarks to know exactly where you're at and if you're ready. So what we're going to do in this podcast is lay out some benchmarks, mostly for conditioning. We're not going to talk too much about strength or anything like that right now. Just some different levels of conditioning benchmarks, and then also pack weight benchmarks to know that you're prepared, to know that your aerobic system is prepared, to know that your legs have the muscular endurance that they need to drive uphill in different situations, and to also know, hey, what is my sustainable pack weight? What can I likely carry uphill, throughout a hunt, whether that's, you need to know how much weight you need to carry on a pack in, or, if you're hunting elk and you got to carry out loads, about where you should sustainably load your pack, what's going to be safe for you and what's going to not totally fag you out as you're packing out. And this also gives you metrics to know, based on where you're at right now, where you might need to be by the end of the summer before hunting season starts. Or if it's not the end of the summer, if you're not hunting in September, maybe you're not hunting until rifle season. Well, this is where a good place to be by rifle season. This would be a good place to be by rifle season. You want to be able to do these things. And so we're going to talk about different aerobic metrics. We're going to talk about metrics on our 10-minute step-up test. Then we're also going to talk about pack weight metrics based on our pack capacity calculator, and kind of I'll walk through the bands, and it'll let you know kind of where you need to be or where you are right now when it comes to how much pack weight you should be carrying sustainably, and I just want to reiterate that if you hear these things and you're like, well, shit, there's no way I could do that right now. It's crucial that you get close to it. But it's still, as I record this, it's still the end of June. So there is time to make progress. So if you're not absolutely right here, you still have time to get to where you need to be. Okay. So the first one we're going to talk about is your aerobic threshold. Now we got to do a little explaining before we get into the metrics. Now your aerobic threshold is the top of your zone 2. So that is the point at which you switch from predominantly using your aerobic system to generate energy to having like a 50-50 split between your aerobic system and your anaerobic system, right? So zone 3 is like a 50-50 split up through the middle, and then towards you get to the top of zone 3 into zone 4, you start to get more anaerobic. We want our aerobic threshold to be as high as possible for us. It's going to be different for everybody. Different people are going to have different potential on aerobic development, but we all need to push our aerobic systems as far to the right as we possibly can, because it just makes us more efficient and it gives us more endurance. Okay, that's the simplest way to say it. Now, years back, there's this fella, I think he's from Australia. His name's Phil Maffetone. Okay, and I'll be honest with you, he kind of has gone off the rails with some of the nutrition stuff he talks about now, but he came up with this concept called MAF, which is maximum aerobic function, which is a fancy way to say aerobic threshold. What he figured out after working with and testing thousands of athletes is if you subtract 40 Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me take a step back because I'm 40. That's why I said that. If you subtract your age from 180, you get pretty close to about where your aerobic threshold is if you've been doing a little bit of training, okay? If you haven't trained, it's likely 5 to 10 beats below that, maybe even lower depending on how deconditioned you are. And if you have been training consistently for a couple years, it's often 5 to 10 beats higher, okay? And so you can move it, right? It's not a static number, but it's a really good approximation. And what I've found in my testing is I would run an aerobic threshold test, right? Just to find someone's aerobic threshold. And then I would do a drift test to confirm it. And what I found with initial testing with a lot of people is that the aerobic threshold testing can get kind of messy, but typically if you just run with MAF at the beginning and then do a drift test, you get all of the information that you need to get. And so what I've transitioned to doing is just taking someone's MAF number, using that as their aerobic threshold, and then testing them with a drift test. Now, a drift test is the way that we do it. We do it on a 10% incline on a treadmill, warm up, and then once you get up to, just below your zone 2, just before your zone 2, you start a 30-minute clock, and whatever pace you're at for that 30-minute clock, you maintain it. Once you end that 30 minutes, you keep going, you don't stop, but you start another 30-minute clock. And then we use the difference in the average heart rates between those two blocks to calculate heart rate drift. So this tells us how stable and durable someone's aerobic system is across time. Okay, so we want the most durable, stable aerobic system across time, and we want our aerobic threshold to be as high as we can possibly push it. We want it to move. It will move initially, and you can. The great thing about your aerobic system is you can continue to develop it for years. You can move that to the right for years, man, and so that we want that to move. Taking a step back, you can develop your aerobic system. It literally can take a full 10 years to fully develop your aerobic system and exhaust its potential, which is just a wonderful thing, because just think of how high of a ceiling you have to improve your fitness. And that's why it's so important to just consistently do aerobic work, not just to get ready for hunting, but for whatever you want to do, but also realizing that it's why it's so important to just do that work as much as you can throughout the year, because you're just continuing to make progress, So it's a very good piece of low-hanging fruit. So we want to make sure that we're doing as much as we can throughout the year. At certain phases throughout the year, you'll do more. Certain phases throughout the year, you'll have to focus on other things. But it always having some zone 1 and zone 2 work in your program is huge, because you can just continue to make progress for years and years and years. Where other types of conditioning, you run into a wall really, really fast and stop making progress. And so we use those other types of conditioning just as we need them to get a certain desired outcome. But focusing on them too much throughout the year, that's why you'll see people make really fast gains, hit a wall, and then not make progress after that, because they're trying to develop a system that doesn't take that much work to develop, and they hit a wall fast, and then they just go backwards because they also don't have the aerobic base to support that work. Okay, so that's just all to talk about the importance of aerobic work. So what do we want to see as a benchmark before we get to hunting season? We want to see on a drift test that someone's aerobic threshold is somewhere between 5 to 10 beats above MAF. And if you're consistently training, if you have consistently trained up to this point in the year, that shouldn't be too tough to accomplish. We had people do that in 3-4 months when they were doing enough aerobic volume earlier in the year. We saw people just jump up with their aerobic threshold, but we want to see it somewhere between 5 to 10 beats above MAF. This tells me that you have a pretty well-developed aerobic system and that it's durable, because if you can, also I forgot to add, you're on a 10% incline, and I want you to be able to maintain at least a 3 mile per hour pace while hitting those numbers. Because that tells me not only do you have a good aerobic system, but you can move fast as you use it, relatively fast. Is that a world-class number? No. But when it comes to hunting, If you can maintain a 3 mile per hour pace while hiking uphill, I mean, 10% incline isn't crazy, but it's still uphill. If you can maintain that, you have a pretty good reserve of aerobic energy, and you're using a lot of aerobic energy to do the work, which is just a beautiful thing. So if you can sustain that uphill for an hour, you're in good shape. It also means that at the end of that, you're going to recover fast and be able to go do the next jaunt, right? So we want to see 3 mile per hour pace, MAF above 5 to 10 beats, your aerobic threshold 5 to 10 beats above MAF on average on a 10% incline, and that's with no weight on your back, okay? So how do we know that where your aerobic threshold is? So let's say you do the drift test, you're same age as me, you're 40, all right? So you start with MAF, you do your drift test, 140 would be the proposed aerobic threshold. So if I do it, and during the first half, my average heart rate is 140, but then my average heart rate during the second 30 minutes of the test is only 3 to 5% above that, only a 3 to 5% drift. We know that 140 is about where my aerobic threshold is. But so let's say I do that and my drift is only like 2%. We know that my aerobic threshold is higher and I can move faster to get to it. And so you can retest after that to see, or you can just approximate based on that. If you're at 2%, you're probably a good 5 beats per minute higher where your actual aerobic threshold is. And so we want to see that for durability. We want to see that for sustained uphill climbs at a good pace, and just to know that your aerobic system is well developed before you go start hunting. Now, there's another aerobic benchmark that I want to see with people, and that is actually loaded. And so if you can maintain a 2 mile per hour pace with 20% of your body weight on your back at a 15% incline, and you can maintain zone 2 there for about an hour, you're in a really good spot when it comes to aerobic movement under load. It takes work to get there. I mean, it's like if you just started doing shit, it's June, it's going to be tough to get there by September or October, but I mean, you can get close. But just know going forward that that's a good benchmark, because it tells me that your aerobic system's in a good place. It tells me you're efficient under load, and it also tells me that you have pretty good muscular endurance. So if you can maintain that, that's awesome. Is it super duper world class? No, but it doesn't have to be. We're going out to hunt, so it's still really good. You're in really good shape if you can do that. Okay, so those are our aerobic benchmarks. Let's look at our uphill muscular endurance benchmarks. So I have this, based on our pack capacity calculator, which we're going to talk about how we use that to figure out kind of sustainable pack weight in just a minute. But we have these bands set up, and I've also taken them and applied them to different types of hunts. And so what the demands on these kind of hunts are going to be from a muscular endurance perspective, not necessarily a pack weight perspective. And what would be your level of preparedness for a specific type of hunt, right? So an elk hunt in most of the Western states is going to be different than a sheep hunt or some other kind of mountain hunt, or even a more extreme hunt. Like, I don't know if you're going to Nepal in a couple of years, like me, to hunt blue sheep, you want to be even higher with some of the step ups. Or if you're going to, Russia to hunt snow sheep, you're going to want even better muscular endurance. But so I kind of have it broken out by that. So what you want to see. So for just a regular elk hunt, hold on, I got to take a step back. Let me explain our 10-minute step up test to you. So here's how it works. 10 minutes, 12-inch box. We use a 12-inch box because that's right in the middle of the average step that someone takes while moving uphill. Average step is usually somewhere between 8 and 14 inches on steep grades, okay? So your usual step is 8 to 14 inches. We put it at 12. It accounts for limb length and all of these different kind of things. 12 is a really good average. I can tell you, if you start to creep box height up even by a couple of inches, you will see a dramatic change in how much energy it costs you. So that's another reason, like, all the mountaineering guys say take small steps when you're going on steep grades. Taking big steps just is gonna wear you out, especially when you're wearing a pack. So we use a 12-inch box, and 20% of our body weight is in our pack, okay? So for 10 minutes, we go at the fastest sustainable pace that we can maintain. And you put like a rep counter on your phone, and then just each time you take a step, you hit it, right? So we count total steps left and right. It's not just, so, you know, let's say you do 150 step ups on your left, 150 step ups on your right. We just count 300, okay? So every time you step up, whether it's with your right leg or your left leg, you hit the counter. What we want to see is an average of 30 steps per minute for like an elk hunt. So that's 300 total steps. You're doing a normal elk, mule deer hunt, you can hit 30 steps per minute. Your muscular endurance is in a pretty good place to go do a hunt like that, okay? Now, if you're going to do a sheep hunt, a goat hunt, something like that, we want to see more in the 350, 360 plus range, because you're likely going to be hunting for longer. You're going to be on typically gnarlier terrain, and you got to do some serious climbs. So we want to see your muscular endurance at a higher rate in the band, right? So you got to be able to sustain more work. Now, are you going to be moving faster? No, but on your hunt, maybe, but it's just more demanding. So if you can create more force and sustain it for longer on a 10-minute step-up test, then we know that that's going to transfer into muscular endurance when you go out into the field, okay? So we want to see you somewhere above that. And then, you know, if you can get up above 400, you know, your muscular endurance is pretty good to hunt any goddamn mountain you want to hunt in the world, whatever you want to do. So if you can hit that number, you're golden. Okay, so that from a muscular endurance standpoint, it's a simple test, and we want to see that. I'll talk about what happens if you can't hit these benchmarks at the end. Okay, so just it might be a question in your mind, you might be thinking, hey Todd, what the fuck? But I will address that in just a bit. Okay, so we got one more thing to get through before we get to that, and that is our pack weight benchmark. So we have different bands set up, performance bands set up based on how many step ups you do in the 10 minutes. They translate to a sustainable pack weight. How did I figure this out? I looked at military research, I looked at mountaineering research, and I took it, and it was conglomerated into these readouts of, okay, well, if you can do this on the 10-minute step-up test, your likely sustainable pack weight is somewhere in this band, okay, based on that. Because, you know, we do the step-up test with 20% of our body weight. So if you have a lot of gas left in the tank with 20% of your body weight, meaning that you can do way more step-ups than, you know, if you can do way more step-ups, it just means that it's costing you less energy. So that means you have more capacity to put weight in your pack, okay? And so this isn't an exact science. This is giving you an approximation based on costs, based on energy costs, based on muscular endurance, based on your durability under your pack, okay? So it's amalgamating research and giving this kind of a spit out type deal, okay? So let's start there. Now, there are 4 bands. There's red, yellow, green, and elite, okay? Now, if you're in the red band, that means you did less than 300 step-ups during the 10-minute step-up test. That means you don't have a lot of capacity on the north side of 20% of your body weight. So your sustainable pack weight is going to be somewhere between 20% and 25% of your body weight. So, you know, if you're a 200-pound guy, that's 40 pounds, 40 to 50 pounds, somewhere in there. Now, I'll hold off. So that's likely where you're going to be and not run yourself into trouble and not completely fatigue yourself out. It's somewhere in the 40 to 50 pound range. Yellow, now that's 300 to 359 step ups in 10 minutes. That puts you into the yellow range, like I said. Then your sustainable weight's somewhere between 25% and 32%, because you have a little bit more left over. You have a little bit more capacity. So you can throw a little bit more weight in your pack, and that's going to be, you can likely manage it. So if you're a 200-pound guy, you know, you're looking at like 65 to 70 pounds being your top end for a sustainable weight. Which, so like if you're packing out an elk, you know, that puts you at a 70-pound pack out, which, you know, it's a little less than probably the typical. It's maybe right around the typical elk quarter. You know, that's probably somewhere between 70 and 100 pounds, depending. So you're not in too bad of a place, right? So that's the yellow zone. It'd be a great place for everyone to be if they're going out on like an elk or a mule deer hunt, because, you know, say you kill say you kill a mule deer and it's you and your buddy and you want to get it all out at one time and you want to get your gear out, you'll be close to be able to manage that. I mean, you'll be able to manage it, don't get me wrong, but you'll be able to do it without completely crushing yourself. That's kind of what we're saying. Like, what can you carry without absolutely whooping your own ass? That's what we're after right here, okay? Then we have the green. That's 360 to 419. Now, if you can do that, you're looking at 32% to 40% of your body weight as a sustainable pack weight. So if you get there, there aren't many pack outs that are going to totally whoop your ass, as long as you're doing everything else to take care of yourself and drinking water, making sure you're eating enough, all of that. It's not going to crush you too bad. If you can't get there, will you still get out? Yeah, I'm sure you can will yourself out. We're just talking about cost when we say this, okay? We're talking about cost. Now, the elite is 420 plus, okay? So that's puts you in a 40 to 50% pack range for a sustainable pack weight. Sometimes, that's going to be the case, right? You might have a 100-pound pack out. I've been there. I could have chose differently, but I did it. And, if you can get to 420 plus, you're in a really good place to be able to not only walk up any goddamn mountain in the world that you want, but also know that you'll be able to carry sustainably carry a really heavy weight. So that's a good thing to know. But like I said, these are guidelines based on amalgamated research. This is not the gospel. This is just based on cost. So that if your muscular endurance is suffering and your capacity under your pack is suffering, you're just going to suffer more when you go out there. So you want to hit these numbers so things don't cost you as much, not necessarily that you won't be able to do it. I want to make sure that I make that really clear. So that brings us to, what if you can't hit these benchmarks? Just know that the cost is going to be higher for you. You can go out and do your hunt, but being able to maintain the aerobic benchmarks we said, the muscular endurance, and then translating that into the pack capacity, just know that if you can't hit them, things are going to cost more. You're going to work harder. It's going to cost you more energy. It's going to deplete you more. Okay, that's fine. It doesn't mean you can't go hunt, but if you want to have the best performance when you're out there, it's important that you get to the place where you can hit most of these numbers based on the hunt that you're doing. Now, it's and I want to be clear when I say that, because I'm not trying to talk anybody out of not going on their hunt if they can't hit these. Fucking go hunt. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, understand that if you can hit these numbers, the cost is lower for you. You'll likely be able to enjoy your hunt more. You won't really question whether or not you can go where you need to go, because not only will you feel it in your body, you'll know you have it, but having the confidence of saying, okay, I can hit that benchmark. I know I'm good to go no matter what. Okay. Now, keep in mind, we want to be able to hit these benchmarks before we ship out. It is the end of June right now. If you can't do this right now, keep in mind, you still have 8 weeks of dedicated training before September. And if you're not hunting until October or the end of October, I don't have a tag until the end of October when rifle season starts in Montana. So, well, I guess I could go hunt archery in Montana, but I'm not going to do that. So you have somewhere between 12 and 16 weeks to get to where you need to be. So you have time. So don't let this discourage you. These are just benchmarks to let you know, here's something I can aim at. And if I can do that right now, I know I'm in a really good place. That's what we're aiming at here. Okay. That's it. And that's all. So I'm going to throw something out to you. If you want to find out where your benchmarks are right now, and then get my guidance based on your benchmarks and what you learn, you can do the pack mule preseason backcountry readiness assessment. Easiest way to do that is I'm going to put a link in the bio to sign up for it. It's $100. It's $100 to give yourself a lot of clarity, a lot of certainty, and to know whether, hey, I'm in a really great spot right now and I can do all this shit. So imagine where I'll be by hunting season. Or if you're not there, I'll give you the guidance about what you need to do to move yourself closer to that, whether or not you sign up for one of our training programs. You don't even have to do that. You can just go through the assessment. I'll give you guidance and you can go off and train on your own. It would be, if you're looking for certainty and you want the confidence that you can get from certainty, wouldn't you want that? Wouldn't that be something that you would make you feel a lot better with what you're going to do for the rest of your summer and knowing that you're as close as you can get to where you need to be by hunting season? So preseason backcountry readiness assessment will test your aerobic system. We'll test your muscular endurance, and we'll see also where your lactate threshold is to see how big is your zone 3. Like, is your zone 2 really low and your zone 3 is really big? And that can really help find out what you need to do from a conditioning standpoint to move yourself as far as you can before the end of the summer. Also, didn't talk about it on here, but we'll also test your mobility and your strength to see, hey, are there deficits here that you can bring up that are actually going to make you move better and save you energy and make you more durable in the backcountry. So again, preseason backcountry readiness assessment. If you want some certainty, click the link, sign up for it. We'll put you through the testing, and I will give you guidance on what you need to do now between now and your hunt to be as certain that you are prepared as possible. Quick note before I let you go, you'll need a heart rate monitor to be able to do the testing. You can't do it without a heart rate monitor. Okay, so if you don't have one, snag one. Or if you do have one, know that you need it. Okay, that is all for this episode. I hope you got some clarity from this just by listening, and I will have a new episode up for you next week.